The delay is not denial. God is preparing the perfect timing for your breakthrough. Many times, when you're walking through seasons of waiting, it feels like heaven has gone silent. You pray, you believe, you do everything right, and yet, nothing seems to move. The doors remain closed, opportunities pass by, and it almost feels as if God has forgotten your name. But in truth, He hasn't abandoned you. He's simply working behind the scenes, arranging something that requires divine timing. What looks like delay to you is often divine preparation. God is not withholding the blessing, He's perfecting the foundation so that when it comes, it doesn't break you, it builds you. Sometimes, what you've been asking for is ready, but you aren't, and God, in His love, refuses to let you receive something you're not prepared to carry. When you think about the greats in the Bible, they all endured a waiting season before their breakthrough. Joseph waited years in prison for his dream to come true. David was anointed as king but went back to tending sheep and running for his life before he ever wore the crown. Even Jesus waited 30 years before beginning his ministry. Why? Because divine timing is about purpose, not pressure. God will not rush something eternal just to satisfy a temporary desire. He wants your character to be strong enough to sustain what your faith has been praying for. If the blessing comes too early, it can crush you. But if it comes at the appointed time, it elevates you. You see, God's timing is not man's timing. We live in a world obsessed with instant gratification. We want everything now. But God doesn't work by the clock, He works by alignment. He sees what you cannot see. He knows the people who need to enter your life, the lessons you need to learn, and the growth you need to experience before the miracle unfolds. That's why sometimes you feel delayed, but you're not being denied, you're being developed. It's in the waiting season that your faith is stretched, your patience is tested, and your trust in God matures. Waiting teaches you to lean on His promises rather than your understanding. It teaches you that obedience is more important than outcome, and that His will is greater than your plan. Every time you think, "Why isn't it happening yet?" remember that God's delays are not detours, they are divine pauses for preparation. Just because it hasn't happened yet doesn't mean it won't. In fact, sometimes, God delays your breakthrough to protect it. There are moments when He knows that if you received what you've been praying for too soon, the enemy would try to steal it, manipulate it, or turn it against you. So He covers it, hides it, and keeps it safe until the appointed time. And when that moment comes, no demon, no situation, and no human hand can stop what's been destined for you. There's a spiritual maturity that only comes through waiting. It's in those quiet seasons, when you feel overlooked or forgotten, that your relationship with God deepens. You begin to understand that faith isn't about seeing, it's about believing even when nothing changes. You learn to pray without evidence, to praise without results, and to keep walking when the path isn't clear. That's where real strength is built. Every unanswered prayer, every delay, every not yet is God refining your spirit for the greater thing ahead. Because when the blessing finally comes, you won't take it for granted, you'll recognize its value, you'll steward it wisely, and you'll give glory where it's due. Think of a seed planted in the ground. You water it, nurture it, and yet, for a while, nothing appears to happen. But underneath the soil, roots are growing deep, unseen, foundational roots that will one day support a strong and fruitful tree. That's what God is doing in your life right now. You may not see the growth yet, but it's happening beneath the surface. The longer the roots take to grow, the stronger the tree will be when it finally breaks through the ground. So if it feels like you're buried, remember, you're not buried, you're being planted. There's a difference. One ends in death, the other begins in life. God's promises never expire. They may take time, but they do not fade. What He spoke over your life will come to pass at the right time, in the right place, with the right people. The waiting isn't wasted, it's sacred. It's in the waiting that your perspective shifts from frustration to faith. You begin to see delays not as punishment but as protection. You realize that maybe the things you thought were setbacks were actually setups for something greater. Maybe the doors that closed weren't rejection but redirection. Maybe God was never saying no, he was saying, "Not yet, my child, I'm still working on it." When you reach that level of trust, peace starts to replace anxiety. You stop questioning the when and start focusing on the who. You begin to trust the God who promised, not just the promise itself. And when you do, you align yourself with heaven's rhythm. You understand that his silence isn't absence, it's strategy. His delays aren't neglect, they're nurturing. His timing isn't late, it's perfect. Every step, every pause, every unseen moment is working together for your good, preparing the stage for the miracle that's about to unfold in your life. Your pain has a purpose, every struggle is shaping your strength and faith. Sometimes it feels like the pain you're experiencing has no meaning, like you're walking through storms that serve no purpose, facing heartbreaks that leave no answers, and carrying burdens that no one else can see. You wonder why life seems harder for you than for others, why your path is filled with obstacles, and why God allows so many trials to test your endurance. But what you don't see is that every ounce of pain you've endured has been shaping you into something greater than you can currently comprehend. God doesn't waste pain. What he allows, he intends to use to mold your character, deepen your faith, and prepare your spirit for the destiny he's written just for you. Pain has a way of teaching lessons that comfort never can. It breaks away the parts of us that rely too heavily on the world and forces us to look upward, towards something higher and eternal. Through pain, God removes false dependencies, distractions, and illusions of control. It's in the broken moments that you learn the true power of surrender. When everything falls apart, when your heart shatters and your plans collapse, you realize that strength was never about holding it all together, it was about trusting God when nothing makes sense. Pain teaches you to pray differently. It moves your prayers from "God, change this situation" to "God, change me through this situation." That's the transformation your soul truly needs. Every great purpose is born through pain. Look at anyone who's walked in divine calling, they've all been through seasons of crushing. Joseph was betrayed by his brothers before he ever reached the palace. Moses fled into the wilderness before leading a nation. Job lost everything before witnessing God's restoration. Even Jesus himself endured the cross before resurrection. The pattern is clear: suffering precedes glory. The pain you're facing right now isn't the end, it's the refining fire that's burning away what cannot go with you into your next chapter. You may not understand it in the moment, but one day you'll look back and see how every tear watered the seeds of your purpose. Pain also reveals what's real within you. When life is easy, it's simple to say you have faith. But when the storms hit, when you're tested to your core, that's when your true belief rises. God uses pain to expose weakness, not to shame you, but to strengthen you. When you realize where you're fragile, you also discover where you need his strength. That's why pain doesn't come to destroy you, it comes to define you. It shows you what's inside: the resilience, the courage, the divine endurance that can only be discovered through trials. It's easy to have hope when everything is working, but real hope shines brightest in the darkness. Real faith doesn't depend on circumstances, it thrives despite them. Many people want elevation, but they don't want to go through the process that builds endurance. But the truth is, endurance is built through struggle. When life pushes you, stretches you, and breaks you, that's where growth happens. God isn't punishing you, he's pruning you. He's cutting away what no longer serves your future, even if it hurts. You're being shaped into someone who can carry more responsibility, more wisdom, more grace. The pain you feel today is the evidence that God is preparing you for something that requires greater capacity tomorrow. Without pressure, there's no diamond. Without fire, there's no gold. Without pain, there's no transformation. Pain also deepens compassion. When you've been broken, you begin to see others differently. You recognize pain in others' eyes because you've seen it in your own reflection. You speak with gentleness because you know what it's like to be misunderstood. You give grace because you've needed it yourself. That's one of the greatest gifts pain gives. It softens your heart while strengthening your spirit. It takes away judgment and replaces it with empathy. It teaches you that everyone is fighting silent battles, and it transforms your story into a source of healing for someone else. The very thing that once hurt you becomes the thing God uses to help others. There's also a sacred intimacy that develops between you and God in times of pain. When you have nowhere else to turn, you learn to rely on Him in ways you never did before. In your tears, you find His presence closer than ever. In your weakness, you discover His strength. Pain becomes the doorway to deeper relationship. You begin to hear His voice more clearly because your distractions have been stripped away. Sometimes, God allows pain not to punish but to position you. He positions you closer to His heart, where your faith becomes more personal, not just something you believe in, but someone you know deeply. It's important to remember that pain is not the sign of God's absence, it's often the mark of His involvement. When God is doing deep work in your life, it's rarely comfortable. He stretches you because He's growing you. He removes people because He's protecting you. He closes doors because He's redirecting you. Every loss, every disappointment, every unanswered prayer is a tool in His hands, tools that shape your destiny with precision. You may think you're breaking down, but in truth, you're breaking through. You're evolving into who you were always meant to be. Even when you can't see the reason, there's purpose behind your pain. Every sleepless night, every tear, every lonely moment is not wasted. It's all part of your spiritual construction. You are being built for endurance, not ease. You're being trained for strength, not comfort. You're being called to rise, not retreat. The pain you feel today is the evidence that your faith is being fortified for the future that's calling you forward. Miracles often come right after the hardest battles. Don't quit before your moment arrives. There's a reason why the darkest nights often come right before the dawn, and the heaviest burdens feel unbearable just before something shifts. When you're close to a breakthrough, resistance intensifies. It's not because God has forgotten you, but because you're nearing the threshold of transformation. The enemy knows you're on the verge of stepping into something powerful, so he amplifies the pressure. He tries to make you doubt everything: your faith, your purpose, your calling, because if he can't stop what God has planned, he'll try to make you give up before you reach it. But those who refuse to quit, even when they have every reason to, are the ones who see the impossible become possible. Every great miracle is preceded by a test of endurance. It's that space between the promise and the manifestation where faith either collapses or becomes unshakable. God often allows the battle to reach its peak to show you that victory doesn't depend on human strength, but on divine intervention. When you reach the end of yourself, that's where His power begins. The Red Sea didn't part until Moses stretched out his hand in faith. The walls of Jericho didn't fall until Israel had marched 7 days, even when it made no sense. Daniel wasn't delivered until he was in the lion's den, and the 3 Hebrew men didn't see God's presence until they were in the fire. Each story carries the same message: the miracle comes after the moment that feels impossible to survive. That's why quitting is the greatest threat to your destiny, because the miracle is often hidden in the very place you're tempted to give up. When life feels like an uphill battle, that's when your faith is being refined. Every obstacle, every delay, every disappointment is not a sign that you're off track, it's confirmation that you're still in the fight, still walking toward purpose. The enemy doesn't attack what's empty, he attacks what's destined. The pressure you're feeling means you carry something valuable, something heaven has ordained. It's not random, it's strategic. You're being stretched to capacity because God is about to pour something greater into your life. What feels like breaking is often the preparation for blessing. In those moments when you feel weary, when you can't see results, and when your prayers seem unanswered, that's when you must dig deeper into your faith. Faith isn't about ignoring pain, it's about believing that pain has an expiration date. It's about trusting that even in chaos, God is in control. The battle you're facing is not just physical or emotional, it's spiritual. The enemy knows that if he can exhaust you, he can discourage you from claiming what's already yours. But when you stand firm, when you choose to keep praying, keep believing, and keep showing up despite the weight, you declare that your faith is greater than your fear. There's a spiritual law that often goes unnoticed: the greater the resistance, the closer the release. Before every miracle, there's always a point of maximum pressure. It's that moment when your strength runs out, when your patience wears thin, and when you wonder if it's even worth it anymore. That's when the supernatural takes over. The widow in the Bible was down to her last jar of oil when the prophet told her to pour, and her act of faith multiplied what little she had into abundance. Elijah prayed for rain 7 times before the cloud appeared. The woman with the issue of blood reached Jesus after 12 years of suffering, and her miracle came because she refused to stop reaching. The same principle applies to you. The moment you feel like giving up is often the moment you're closest to breakthrough. God allows these seasons of testing not to punish you but to prove the power of perseverance. He wants you to see that the miracle isn't just about what you receive, it's about who you become through the waiting. You develop spiritual endurance, inner strength, and divine awareness in these moments. You begin to recognize that miracles are not random acts of favor, they are responses to faith that refuses to bow to defeat. Every step you take, every prayer you whisper, every tear you shed is a seed planted in the soil of expectation, and those seeds eventually bear fruit. It's easy to believe when things are good, but real belief is forged in adversity. The chosen ones understand that divine promises are often hidden within trials. The harder the journey, the greater the glory. The miracle doesn't just change your situation, it transforms you. It rewires your perspective, strengthens your resilience, and deepens your relationship with God. That's why so many miracles in Scripture happened in moments of desperation. When human ability ended, divine power began. That's the same energy that's working in your life right now. Sometimes God will let the situation grow darker so that His light can be seen more clearly. He lets you face the impossible to remind you that you were never meant to handle it alone. He lets you walk through fire so He can reveal that you were never meant to burn. The harder the battle, the louder the testimony. What you're fighting now is proof that something powerful is about to be born from your perseverance. Heaven doesn't waste endurance, it rewards it. Every time you say, "I will not quit," you move one step closer to the miracle waiting on the other side of your obedience. It may not happen the way you expect or when you expect, but when it comes, it will make sense why the battle was so hard. The pain, the tears, the waiting, all of it will align perfectly when the promise unfolds. And you'll realize that every second you endured was worth it, because what God is preparing for you will carry the weight of His glory and the evidence of His timing. Divine alignment is happening behind the scenes. Trust that what's meant for you is already on its way. There are moments in life when everything seems still, when prayers echo into silence and doors remain closed no matter how much you knock. It's in these quiet, uncertain seasons that God is working in ways you can't yet see. Just because you don't notice movement doesn't mean there isn't progress. Heaven often works in secret, arranging people, circumstances, and opportunities to align perfectly with the path designed for you. It may feel like nothing is happening, but in reality, everything is happening. You're being positioned for the next chapter of your purpose, one that requires perfect timing and divine coordination. Every delay, every detour, every disappointment has been a part of the alignment process. The job you didn't get, the relationship that ended, the door that stayed shut, none of it was a coincidence. God's plans are too precise to be random. Sometimes He withholds what you want to make room for what you truly need. What feels like rejection is often redirection, and what feels like a setback is actually set up. There are seasons where God hides you not to punish you, but to prepare you. When He's aligning your destiny, He's also protecting it. He shields you from premature exposure, from people who aren't meant to walk with you into your next level, and from opportunities that would distract you from His purpose. Divine alignment means that everything connected to your destiny is being positioned to meet you at the appointed time. You might not understand how it will all come together, but God does. He sees the end from the beginning. While you're wondering why you had to lose certain things, He's arranging divine replacements that will fit you better than what you thought you wanted. When you look at your life, there are threads of divine timing woven into every part of it. You met certain people exactly when you needed them. You missed certain moments that could have derailed you. You were delayed just long enough to avoid destruction. Those were not accidents, they were evidence of alignment. Sometimes divine alignment requires isolation. When God wants to move you into a higher dimension of purpose, He often separates you from familiar environments. You may lose friends, opportunities, or habits that once felt comfortable. It hurts because your human side wants to hold on, but your spiritual side is being stretched towards something greater. God removes what no longer fits so that what's meant for you can arrive without resistance. It's like a puzzle, each piece has its place, but until the other pieces are ready, you can't see the full picture. You may feel incomplete for a season, but that's only because the pieces meant for you are still being shaped. While you're waiting, God is orchestrating. He's aligning hearts, opening unseen doors, and shifting circumstances in your favor. There's no coincidence in divine design. When you're walking in obedience and faith, even detours work for your good. The people you're meant to meet will cross your path. The opportunities you're destined for will find their way to you. You don't need to chase what's already written into your story. What's meant for you is not lost, it's being prepared. The challenge is to trust the timing even when you can't trace the steps. It's easy to trust God when everything is visible, but true faith is trusting Him when you can't see a thing. That's where spiritual maturity grows. You begin to realize that alignment doesn't always look like progress. Sometimes it looks like stillness. Sometimes it looks like confusion. Sometimes it looks like loss. But underneath it all, divine order is unfolding. You may be in what feels like a holding pattern, but in the spiritual realm, you're being positioned for takeoff. The reason you're waiting is because the runway isn't clear yet. God is making sure that when it's your time to move, nothing will stand in your way. Think about how nature moves in perfect rhythm. The tide doesn't rush the moon, the seed doesn't question the soil. They both move according to divine timing. The same God who holds the stars in alignment is aligning your life too. Everything you've endured, every prayer you've whispered, every act of faith you've made is part of a larger divine design. There's a reason you couldn't force certain things to happen, they weren't in alignment yet. But when the time is right, everything that once felt delayed will fall into place effortlessly, and you'll see why the waiting was necessary. You don't have to manipulate or strive to make things work. You don't have to beg people to see your worth or force open doors that refuse to open. What's aligned with your purpose will flow naturally. It will recognize you the way light recognizes dawn. Divine alignment brings peace, not pressure. It comes together smoothly, without chaos or confusion. That's how you'll know it's from God. It won't drain you, it will confirm you. It will feel right not because it's easy, but because it's ordained. And while you wait for that alignment to manifest, remember that God is not just working on your circumstances, He's working on you. He's shaping your character, refining your patience, and teaching you how to trust. He's building the version of you that can handle the blessings He's preparing. Because when the alignment finally happens, it won't just change your surroundings, it will elevate your entire life. So even when you can't see it, hold your peace. Even when it feels delayed, keep your faith. Even when it doesn't make sense, stay in obedience. Trust the process, because divine timing is never wrong. The alignment is already in motion, and soon, everything that's meant for you will find its way into your life. Your waiting has not been wasted. Every moment, every prayer, every tear has been a part of heaven's design. What's coming will make sense of everything that once confused you. When divine alignment finally reveals itself, you'll realize it was worth every moment of trust, every step of faith, and every second of patience you gave along the way.